So, Tejal, how was your week?
My week's been really good, Flo. I had my usual clinics, which I love. I love my team. I love going to work where I work. Just a bit like you. I feel like you're kind of, when you feel part of a family or you have a work
Mhm.
family. So it doesn't feel like work, which is, I think, a real privilege. I actually got back today from a weekend away with my school friends. So I've
Oh,
known them
nice.
2 years, or we've known each other maybe more or longer. So we always make a point to try and spend a weekend together or do like a small
Mm.
staycation. And I couldn't go for both of the nights, but I managed to go for one. And I genuinely just love these times when it's just old
Oh,
friends, you know each other. It's so easy. It's so wholesome.
mm.
So yeah, no, I was.
Where did you go?
We stayed near a place in Marlow. So actually, sort of just along the River Thames.
Okay.
It's a really lovely place, lovely town, village, I'm not sure. And it was a gorgeous Airbnb, and then we sort of went into town for brunch today. So yeah, I would recommend it if you're ever that way. I think Marlow is where Sir Steve Redgrave actually started his
Oh,
teaching
nice.
career. Yeah, there's a big, massive like statue to commemorate him.
Oh, fab. Oh, I might have to take a journey down there.
And interestingly, I think there's a really famous bridge there. Have you ever been to Budapest?
I've not been to Budapest
Okay.
actually.
So there's the same architect who designed the bridge in Budapest, designed the bridge in Marlow. So they're like twinned together. It's really random. But I was in Budapest earlier this year, which is why I know this.
I was just saying that's
I
a
didn't
really
know.
random fact to have up your sleeve there. Yeah, I do. I always love it when you go into towns and they're twinned with and there's some twinned towns are like twinned with like really big cities, and they're these tiny like British towns. You're like, oh,
Yeah, exactly one of those.
so,
How was your week?
I had a good week. It's been a bit up and down. I've had the flu and was hit by a car, but I did an ultra marathon yesterday and I won, which was very exciting. Um,
Tell me more. That sounds amazing. It doesn't sound like it's something that you said so casually, like, oh, I went for a jog.
well,
Can we just pause there for a second?
a friend of mine who's in my running club, he had to pull out sort of last minute and was like, "Do you want to take my place?" I was like, "Okay, sure." So it was in Dare Valley, which is up sort of Aberdare, and it's this beautiful sort of it's a wind turbine farm actually. So you're just running up sort of all these kind of fire tracks and trails, and yeah, we were really lucky. Had gorgeous weather, and it was just a day of being out doing what I love, which is just running in nature. So yeah,
How long did it take you?
I did it in 5 hours and 15 minutes. So
So that's insane. That is absolutely insane. I am actually going to be badgering you because I've signed up to something completely ridiculous later on next year. And
yeah.
my PT was like, you're going to have to start running. And like a little part of me died because I've always been a sprinter at school. I've never really taken naturally to long distance running, but I know I'm going to have to it's a mind over matter thing, I know,
Definitely,
but,
definitely.
but I'm petrified, I'm not going to lie.
Oh, you've got it. You've got it. Human beings are built for endurance running. It's like the only thing we're built for. So you'll be great.
Don't know about that. But that's super inspiring. Congratulations.
Cute. What have you signed up for?
Tough Mudder.
Ah, fantastic.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. It was really funny how it all happened. So we share a PT, like when I say my colleague and I go to the same PT, and she made a comment with Tough Mudder in it, totally out of context of what the competition is about. And I was like, hang on, that's a brilliant idea. We should all do it. And they were like, absolutely not. You're bonkers. And I was like, no, no, no. Like we've all been training. Like this is something to work towards. Let's just do it. And I kind of just tried to get everyone on board, and no one was like keen. And but I was like, no, okay, the ideas come to me for a reason, so I'm gonna follow through with it anyhow, regardless. I think I've done it in a bit of ignorance, so I'm not quite sure I've signed myself up to. So I think it's just gonna be a great challenge of resilience and grit and determination and
Definitely.
Whole lot of mud.
Yeah, lots of mud. That's the best bit, all the mud. We had our Christmas party last night, actually, and because of being out on the trails all day, even though you've got shoes on, your feet do get soaked and muddy. And even after I had a bath, there's a lot of like mud that's just ingrained. And I was meant to be wearing open-toed shoes, and I was like, yeah, I definitely can't wear open-toed shoes. I was like, I'm gonna have to put a boot on because yes, this is not the look you want for a classy dinner. But for anyone listening, this week, the voice you've heard, we are joined by Dr. Tejal. She qualified as a dentist 10 years ago from Queen Mary University of London. She works as a GDP at the same practice she actually did her FD training at, and has an interest now in endo. She has previous experience working in the community dental services as well as being an SHO, and she was actually the educational supervisor for 4 years on the Berkshire scheme, mentoring foundation dentists as well as leading study day sessions. After experiencing some burnout for the second time 2 years ago, she took a 3-month sabbatical, which led her to gain a renewed appreciation for the profession as well as the clarity needed to make changes. Her time is split now between dentistry, her podcast called Roots and Resilience, dance, and supporting female dentists. And she is also a fellow vegan dentist, which is how we connected.
Yeah, go on.
So yeah, I was going to say, why are you vegan?
I will. I love that question. But before that, I just want to say thank you, Flo, for being vulnerable and sharing that episode about your thoughts around pigs' heads, because that is how I came across your podcast and you and how we connected. And I just think there's so much power in being able to share these things. Because you don't know who's going to listen to them. You don't know what you're saying is, who it's going to resonate with. And that was something I've been carrying with me for so long. Like you don't like, I don't know, 10 years maybe. And for you to hear you say that, and for me to listen to that was so reassuring that, okay, oh my goodness, like, it's not just me who thinks that way, because I didn't know who to talk to about this or who to really share it with. I thought people would just think I'm a bit weird, or I don't know anything that would come of it. And funnily enough, I'd never considered implants because I was just so uncomfortable about the whole pig heads thing. And a few weeks before I heard your podcast, I just reached out to somebody to say, look, I know you're quite into implants. As far as I understand, when you're training to do any implants, it does involve training on using pigs' heads, but are you aware of any alternatives? And she actually mentioned the course that you're doing now, Flo. So it was just weird how everything kind of connected. But
Wow,
going
yeah.
back to your question about why I'm vegan, so I was raised in a vegetarian household. It was just something that's a really strong value as a family that's been passed down, and completely, understand the sort of the reasons behind it, and it's very much aligned to the sort of faith we follow. And maybe I would say when I was about 19, I got exposed to veganism at like a convention organized by a community, a youth wing of a community that I'm part of. And I got exposed to the realities of the dairy industry, and I just saw some very graphic videos about what goes on. And like I grew up drinking gallons of blue whole milk. Like even when I was at uni, I think when I was at uni, I thought, okay, maybe I should tone it down and go to green, which is a little bit more sensible. And yeah, so then so when this kind of like became apparent, I just felt something, it just really hit me really deep. And I just felt like, oh my goodness, like how can this, it was going against my core values, massively conflicting. It didn't feel good, it didn't feel right. But for me, it was not an immediate overnight decision, but it was a concept that never left me, which got nurtured over time, and so I gradually transitioned. Um, and then I think at some point I just knew it was going to happen, but I'm not going to lie, it wasn't easy. Like my family didn't really understand it very well, in the sense they were just really fearful of the fact I'd be so like withering away, and it would be such an unhealthy lifestyle choice. And out of fear, out of lack of education, they were just really kind of worried about it and not hence that weren't able to support it. So there was a lot of tension, I'll be honest. But yeah, but it's funny now, like you fast forward now, like my sister's vegan, my dad's vegan, my mum's like 95% vegan, or she'll say she's not, she'll make it clear that she's not 100% vegan, but she's there or thereabouts. And this is out of their own will, their own choice, and they've gone on their own journeys around it. So I think from an animal welfare point of view, it was, from an ethical point of view, it was just something that was so aligned to what I stand for.
Oh yeah, I do think it's funny you were saying about like your mum sort of being like 95 and being very much like, but I'm not 100%, because I do think there is still so much around people sort of not wanting to label themselves fully, and sort of that whole like people coming out now as like plant-based rather than vegan, just so they're not like a vegan. And I think there's still a lot of work, I think, to be done in society, just sort of accepting it. And I really hope that actually more people do sort of wake up to some of what's going on with some of the industries and things. I won't go too much into depth.
This conversation could go down a different tangent.
Yes. So have you ever had to work on any pig's heads then?
Yeah, so I think my first and only experience has been not during my undergrad, but as a postgrad, when I was a VT, one of our study days was an oral surgery one. And so I knew it was oral surgery, but there was nothing to warn me that how it was going to be delivered. So I turned up and we were taken to the area where we do our like the phantom head stuff, and everyone had a tray, and I just remember this so graphically. There was a girl in my cohort with a tray with a pig's head on it, and I just genuinely felt so sick to my core that I was not prepared for it at all. And my immediate reaction was like, Tejal, you can't do this. You can't do this. This is not this is so wrong for you, kind of thing. But I just felt like I couldn't say anything because they were so like attending your study days was absolutely mandatory to complete your year. And if you missed a study day, you literally had to be on your deathbed to miss a study day. So I was like, if I missed a study day, like I might not complete the year. Like this is going to have massive repercussions. I can't risk that. So I kind of just stayed stum and just got on with it and just did it. But it was very uncomfortable, I'm not gonna lie.
I'm so sorry that you sort of had to go through that. I had a really similar experience where in walking in again on a study day, and again it was just down as oral surgery, like they didn't label anything, and walked into the room and was very overwhelmed. But you clearly kept it together a lot better than I did, because I just burst out crying, which was maybe a little bit of an overreaction, but my TDS was actually incredibly understanding, and he said, you don't need to do this, like it's clearly too much for you. So yeah, I was able to not do the pig's head session and it not impact sort of graduating the year or anything.
Often these things just take having the conversation, but I actually felt so afraid that I couldn't even have that conversation, which I sort of kick myself about, if I'm honest, now as a more sort of mature person who can express herself a bit better and speak what's on my mind. But at the time, I just didn't have the courage to do that, and I regret that.
I know that they said they were going to try going forward to make sure that they really sort of labelled it and made it. I think in the future years they've been emailing to say like, oh, this one's on a pig's head. Please let us know if you've got any sort of objections to it, which I think that's the main thing. Is it's just giving people that option, isn't it, to say actually, no, I'm not comfortable, and actually, can I use an aubergine? Which is I found out is a very good alternative for practicing suturing on. So.
There you go.
It's not gonna, it's it doesn't cost the earth, and it's quite a very reasonable substitute.
Yeah, I imagine also a lot cheaper.
True.
Are you thinking about going down implants now, or are you sticking sort of on that endo side, or?
So at the moment, I'm just really enjoying endo. So I want to do more endo at the moment, and so I'm focusing on that. I haven't ruled out implants, and actually, I've been really delighted that I can actually give it some consideration and thought. So I never say never.
Mhm.
I'm a bit one of those people that doesn't want to dip my feet in too many pies, like all together in terms of like advancing my clinical skills.
Mm.
So I would certainly give it consideration later on down the line. And some people say like it's either implant or team endo, but I would argue actually that why can't you do both? Um, so yeah, I think it's really exciting that now, things are progressing and there's other options and available.
I suppose if you do both, if the endo fails, you then got the next the next step right there. So.
Yeah. Well, actually, a lady on my course, my endo course, she is a general dentist, but a lot of her work is implant work. So I was really surprised. I was like, "So what are you doing here?" kind of thing. And it just goes to show that, you don't need to label yourself as anything, really.
Mm.
You can do what pleases you clinically, what interests you. You shouldn't
Mm.
really hold yourself back if you have an interest in something and you want to explore it.
Go for it.
100% agree. Do you? So I know that obviously there are certain products we use that aren't vegan. Do you feel uncomfortable sort of ever using them in surgery at all, or are you sort of happy using them?
So it's a great question, actually, Flo. So for example, if I was doing implants, I know often implants come along with bone grafting, and a lot of the bone graft sources can be animal based. And so that I know I'd feel a little bit uncomfortable about that, but I know appreciate you have to give your patient all the options. So I know that's crossed my mind before. Also in terms of things like the leather being used in terms of the upholstery of the seats and stuff. A lot of that is outside of my control because it's not my surgery type thing. But
Mm.
I think wouldn't it be ideal like if you could work in a purely like vegan dental surgery, like if that was such a thing, or if there wasn't even a way? Maybe there is. That could be a conversation for us offline. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I think I've just kind of I can't think of anything that I'm doing right now that is grossly um non-vegan. But the thing is, a lot of the products that we use, like we can't be absolutely certain that that the ingredients haven't been tested on animals, for example. Like you could look
Mm.
into it into the nth degree. It's going to be really difficult to get full reassurance that everything you're using is totally sort of, um, I would say, vegan friendly as such. So,
Mm.
um, I don't know. What can I ask you the same question?
Again, my sort of standpoint is like so I know I'm not going to be able to do things that aren't tested on animals, like particularly in that medical field. But I think if I know there's an alternative, then and it's not going to impact clinically, then I'd always try to. So a bit like sort of with the synthetic bone grafting, or it's things like the Duraflat fluoride varnish isn't vegan, whereas if you go for the like Voco fluoride varnish, that one is. So there's small changes like that. And again, it depends where your line is because it's to do with like the shellacs, so like the beetles and stuff. So
That's
again,
interesting, actually. I didn't know that.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and again, things aren't advertised, and it depends how much time you want to spend, reading through ingredients lists, looking at different things like that. Like, again, I probably wouldn't use the tooth mousse, that were the one with the is it the
Oh, yeah.
casein in and things like, unless something came out that said, this is the absolute wonder product. But so I think that's where my sort of moral line is. I've always, again, you're putting that patient first, and it is interesting because I do think we probably should be talking to patients more about their sort of their ethical preferences as well, because I think a lot of the time you're just like, yeah, we're doing this, and they actually don't then get their say in it either, because some toothpaste and things aren't actually vegan.
Yes, that's right.
And they
Yes, a lot of
don't
them
know.
are.
So
Yes.
so again, I think it's just having that knowledge bank. And I've had some really interesting conversations with some patients where they're like, well, I actually use this because I found out this, and you're like, oh, I didn't know that. Um,
Yeah.
so that's been very useful. Um, and even emailing some of the companies as well, just to be like, can I check on this?
Yeah, I've done that. I've done that sort of within and dentistry, even without dentistry, just like products where it's a little bit o- ambiguous about, like where it's not clearly documented online or with the ingredients and stuff like that. And often it just takes an email to kind of get a bit more clarification either way. Um, but actually, sometimes the information is you have to go digging for it. Like it's not so transparent.
Hmm.
And some products are perfectly fine, but you wouldn't be able to glean that unless you genuinely kind of looked at it in detail.
Hmm. The thing I would really, well, I would love if maybe someone came out with a whole document which was like, these are vegan dental products, these are not vegan dental products. Maybe that's something we should collaborate on, actually.
Oh, we could make a collaborative document on that stuff, actually.
Yeah.
That might be helpful. Yeah,
Um,
for sure, let's do it.
I like that plan. But I'd love for someone to do a study as well on sort of the impact of a vegan diet on oral health. I appreciate that there'd be too many, I think, like confounding factors in it. But
Yeah.
I think on
uh,
that point, I feel like sometimes it's very easy to be or follow a vegan lifestyle, but actually your diet can be pretty appalling. Like it can be heavily processed, full of like the refined stuff or stuff that's packed with refined sugars. And it can be misconstrued as being a decent or an acceptable or healthier alternative when actually it's just nutritionally pretty poor.
mhm.
And I think those people are actually probably a high caries risk because if they're not being checked recently, like regularly.
Oh, yeah, 100%, 100% agree. So tell me about your sort of sabbatical, sort of what led you to sort of wanting to take a sabbatical there?
Um, so it's again an excellent question. I knew I had to take time out. Like I just knew, and at the time I just didn't know why. But I knew I had to take time out, and I think it sort of happened around COVID, the first kind of internal whisper I had that Tejal, you just need a break. And I couldn't do much because it was COVID, we were locked down, you couldn't really travel, and you just like you don't really want to be like making any big life decisions. You don't, there's so much uncertainty. I was like, "No, I have to hold on to the jobs that I have because I'm really lucky I have them," type thing. And so
Mm.
you kind of just cracked on with it. And then it was a combination of a lot of things. But the thing that really held me back, Flo, was I was so insecure about letting go, not having an income when I wasn't working. Um, I just felt like it was, everything I'd worked for, it was just going to be like a step back. And I found it very hard to rationalize it, although I knew I needed it.
Mm.
And I'm happy to share that it was actually coaching sessions that really helped me navigate orchestrating it because I just didn't know where to start. It's very difficult when you're self-employed but working for somebody else. I had
Mm.
actually two jobs at the time. I was self-employed for 3 days, I was salaried for 2 days. So I had two bosses that I had to have this conversation with. And I'm super grateful, Flo, that I was able to be granted that time off. And I think, yeah, it's very easy for me to say, yeah, I was totally burnt out. I needed that break. And when you look at generally people's career trajectories, generally speaking, the time, well, for women anyway, when they have time off is usually mat leave, right? Or if you're on
Mhm.
sick leave or long-term sick leave, which doesn't count as a break. And equally,
Mhm.
anyone who's had mat leave will argue that it's not a break.
Mhm.
So it's just not a thing unless perhaps you're between jobs, and you take an opportunity or a window like that to spend that time for yourself. So yeah, it was very, I didn't know who to really talk to about this, but anyways, the long story short, I managed to orchestrate it, I managed to make it happen, and it was the best thing I've ever done, I think. One of them actually, one of them obviously is going vegan was one of my best life decisions. But my close, like, like a close second was also just giving myself that gift of time, that space to really reflect, to see what I was doing. And I think a lot of these things can, these feelings of kind of stagnation or lack of direction or feeling lost or not feeling connected to what you're doing or being engaged with your profession, a lot of that is comes down to because you're not working in alignment to yourself. So giving
Mhm.
yourself that time and space and that break, a breather away from the profession to kind of observe and look into what you're doing with your life
Mhm.
really
Mhm.
helped for me put things into perspective. It helped me gain clarity in terms of what I wanted to do long term, what I want to achieve professionally, personally. I got
Mhm.
to know that actually, Tejal, you're actually more of an introvert or an ambivert. So I am very happy being around people, but I need my time away as well to recharge and reset my energies. And when you're seeing patients 5 days, day in, day out, and not having enough time to recharge, I think that was also probably taking its toll to the point I don't think I was being able to offer my patients the best service. I wasn't able to be the best colleague or the best version of myself. And so I recognized when I was away, I was like, I can't go back to what I was doing. I need to try and get a different, just reset my setup to make it more sort of aligned, I think,
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
me.
Thank you for being so sort of vulnerable with that answer. That was really inspiring there. When you said you had a coach, sort of what sort of, how did they help you sort of navigate that then? Was it like a
So
life
I
coach?
think, so coaching, I think, is basically such an underutilized modality in healthcare. Period.
Mhm.
Like it's such, if you go to corporates, or if you're in a salary job, you'd always have some level of, you'd either have a line manager or you'd have infrastructure in place where people are kind of really focusing and looking into your personal development.
Mhm.
Someone who's self-employed, no one's doing that. It's all self-directed. You've got to take on that initiative to ask for that appraisal or to do whatever it is that you need to do.
Mhm.
Um, so coaching was just somebody who's not a dentist, who was able to essentially, they're not giving you the answers. They are asking you questions for you to figure out your own issue or navigate your own issues. So
Mhm.
they might give you a few tools, a few things to think about, um, but that's what it is. And I'd always been on training courses to coach others and to mentor others when I was at ES, and those
Mhm.
were they were brilliant. Like I cannot believe it. If you ever get the opportunity to go on a coaching and mentoring course, absolutely do it. You will be surprised how much you learn about yourself. I did it because it was something that the deanery just put me on, and I was like, I had really low expectations, and I just turned up
Mhm.
because it just fell onto my lap type thing. But the amount of value I gained from it, it was absolutely insane. But I'd never really been on the other side of it, so having a coach myself. Um, so yeah, that is really valuable. Um,
Hmm. I shall have to look for a coaching and mentoring course now. I know one of the guests we had in season 2 talked about sort of like leadership courses, and I do think as dentists we all focus on we don't focus enough on sort of those softer skill courses,
100%.
and actually they are
100%.
so much
Yeah,
value.
Yeah, and sometimes you think you're doing all right actually, because if you're not a practice owner, you're like, why would I need a leadership course? Or if you think your communication skills are decent, you're getting on with your patients, not having any complaints, you think, okay, I'm doing all right. Why do you need a
Mhm.
communications course? And oh my goodness, like this is our it is I honestly, that's one of the things, if I could do going back, is start my personal development journey a lot earlier for sure. There is so much, like you don't realize as a dentist you are leading yourself, you're leading your surgery, you're leading your clinic, your nurse, your receptionist, like you are like a leader within that surgery, even if you're not the principal. So
Mhm.
yeah, honing those leadership skills is fundamental.
So when you came back from that sabbatical and you said you sort of had made some changes, was it sort of, did you change your working pattern or hours or?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was out there, I was just like, Tedra, you can't go back to working 5 days. Like you can't do that. It's just not serving you or anyone around you. So I resigned from my community job, which was really difficult, Flo, because I loved working there. I loved the people, my colleagues, um, and but it was the right thing to do for me, and thankfully they were really understanding. But there was a lot of guilt that comes, and I think it's as a woman, and maybe you might relate. So often, sometimes making the right decision for you can come with so much guilt that you're always having to battle with. And so, but I had that confidence to take that step, having had that clarity. So I stayed on with my practice, the practice I'm still working at, so continued working there 3 days. And I just thought, okay, this will give me a little bit of breathing space to then see what I can do. And it just meant I had a lot more opportunity to do other things that are meaningful. And as we know, we spend so much time training to be dentists. So much of our lives and time are dedicated to dentistry, our profession, and it becomes so embedded as part of your identity. But honestly speaking, like if that's the only thing that you have, you can find very quickly that it can become really almost like claustrophobic, or not claustrophobic, but you have, if you haven't nurtured those other meaningful relationships outside the profession, or pursued hobbies and interests and other things that really give you joy and meaning, it can become really all consuming. So having a bit more space actually allows me to do those things. And it's again such a big deal for me to be able to take a step back, because I found it really hard to give myself permission to do that. I was like, you don't have any commitments. Well, how can you justify going part-time? Like, you've worked so hard to get, to a certain level, and taking a step back felt for me going backwards. And that was just a psychological block that I had to figure out and go through. But sometimes flow less can be more. And now, having been part-time, I think my colleagues can see I'm much more present when I'm there. My patients get much better service because I'm really there when I'm there. I'm super engaged. And actually, my productivity has increased massively at the same job, working at the same place, same hours. It's quite interesting.
That's yeah, that's really inspiring there. And I think I actually quite like that word you used of claustrophobic, because I do think it can. I mean, me and producer Simon were talking before you came on, the classic about how the dental world is really small, sort of everyone does know each other, and I think if you do get so consumed into just dentistry, it can your world actually can become quite small and just inevitably lead to that burnout. It is a high pressured job. You're having again to communicate with so many people day in day out, and particularly if that isn't your sort of preferred style and things, there is that claustrophobic element, that I can really see how that pressure can build if you don't take that time away to nurture, as I said, those other relationships. It's I think for me that's just running the mountains.
Yeah, movement is so key, Flow, so key. Like being in nature, so nourishing as well, and very, again, at our doorstep often, or not having to go too far for it, but can be super, super healthy, reinvigorating, healing, all the rest of it. Yeah.
Would you recommend sort of everyone to do a sabbatical?
Everyone should do a sabbatical. Well, actually, if you think about the traditional meaning of a sabbatical, that is basically from the word Sabbath, and it's all comes from the same branch. It's actually translates to taking a year off after every 7 years. So after every 7 years, taking a year off, something like that. And actually, I was like, do you know what? If I took a sabbatical now, why can't I not take one, a few years later? Like it, I think. Should everyone take it? I think if you want to do it, I would say absolutely, absolutely. Why not? As I would argue, why not? I know in dentistry it can be incredibly difficult, and it can be really challenging to be able to take time away without resigning. It may not be possible. You may not be able, like, depending on where you're working, what the setup's like, and what the financial commitments are in terms of how the business is set up. It's not easy, let's put it that way. If you're a part of a big corporate where they often have career break policies, it's actually there, like the infrastructure's there. You've just got to kind of apply for it and get the people on board, and in that sense, it can be a lot easier. So it's not easy to orchestrate. It can be done. And if you want to do it, I think there is so much to gain from it, because I came back with a renewed sense of appreciation. Like I said, for the profession, I was like, we are in an incredible profession. And I realized actually, it wasn't dentistry that was what I'd fallen out of love with. It was just the whole kind of grind more than anything. I actually loved what I do. So it helped me realize that. It helped me get to know myself, and actually getting to know, I can't emphasize how important it is to understand who you are, and how your mind works and all of those things, because it just means you make better decisions, aligned to who you are and what's important to you. It gave me a renewed sense of purpose, clarity. It was really important. I think it's super important to have direction flow. You need to understand. It's very easy to go day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, just kind of plodding along. And I think that's what I fell into. I fell into a comfortable place, but that is very dangerous, because when you're comfortable you can start stagnating. When you start stagnating, you start de-skilling. When you start de-skilling, you can become less engaged. You're not being challenged. Like, we are all really intellectually geared, right? Like, we're all very kind of from that
That type A personalities.
kind of like
we actually, you need to be positively challenged. And well, that's what I realized I do anyway. I can't speak for everyone in the profession, but I'm sure most people fall into that. So I think you have to be able to continue nurturing that throughout your profession. Otherwise you just can disengage or get bored. And I never planned to be in general practice. So for me, didn't really invest in myself soon enough, because I never thought I'd be in general practice. And that's a whole nother story as well. So I think I lost complete vision of where I wanted to take my career, what I wanted to do. So I think there's a lot to be gained by taking time out. And look, and if a sabbatical is not an option for you, just take time out by yourself. Like, take a few weeks off by yourself. Like, to be able to get away. Like, I figured out you just need to fall back in love with dentistry, just 5-step formula. First step is you take time out. Second step is you kind of, to take time out, get a breather. Second step is like, you just evaluate, ask yourself those big questions, like, what do you want? What do you want? What kind of dentist do you want to be? What do you want out of life? What type of lifestyle do you want? All of those things. Try and really understand what it is that you enjoy. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And then you can sort of gain that. Once you get that clarity, then you can start to make like a targeted, personalized plan of how you're going to get there. And then you've got direction. You really need to have that goal or set of goals, and then you can work towards them. And the last thing is that once you know yourself better, you're going to be in a much better place to be able to manage your energy levels, your motivation levels. Like, when you know when you're feeling or you're pushing too hard, you need to take a step back. That's cool. If you're finding, you've built up your resilience toolkit, is what I like to call it, so that you can, if you've had a difficult, challenging time at work or a patient, you've built those support systems around you to be able to lean on when you need that support. Because otherwise it can be so isolating. Flo, as you said, we're in such a high pressured environment. If you're trying to do everything by yourself, it is so challenging.
I really like that whole, it's like getting your goals in line with your values. And I think that's what those steps, actually finding that, taking that time, working out what your values are, and then the goals to sort of align with that, to sort of put in that development. Really, really strong sort of way sort of to move forward, and very apt considering we're going into a new year. So
it's a good time.
Actually, my favorite time of year, well, I have lots of favorite times of the year, but one of them is because I love doing this exercise that gets me to, it takes like half a day, but it's great. But I literally reflect on the entire year, because Flo, we are always looking forwards. We always forget to often look back and see where we have, what we've achieved, what we've, where we were, where we are now, and celebrate those wins. I think that's really, really important. And also then to look ahead and say, right, okay, how am I going to make the most out of for next year. I think that's really
Mhm.
important.
I like the fact you take sort of a full half day for that, because again,
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, I really, I've been doing it for the last 3 or 4 years, and it's been such an incredible exercise, I cannot say.
I'm gonna have to sit down and do this.
I have a brilliant resource, by the way, so I can
Share that if
Yeah,
there's a
no,
way.
definitely send us the link for that. That would be fantastic. Do you find it easy sort of connecting with other dentists? I know you've got a podcast as well, and I know sort of we connected sort of through Instagram and everything. Do you think that's also really good, sort of having that support network just of general dentists?
I think I cannot say emphasize how important that is. Like, I'm really fortunate. I have a sister who is in the same profession, and we work together. So I have somebody to lean on, or we can lean on each other, and that's really reassuring that we can just pick up the phone to somebody and just say,
Mhm.
"Listen, I've got this issue, or this, you've had a difficult day or a difficult patient," and we can just talk it through. And what we've realized, or what I felt like I've taken for granted, is like not everybody has that, or if you're in a practice that's really supportive. For me, that's really important. Like, my colleagues are outstanding. I can knock on anyone's door. I can call anybody up, and they're going to be there, genuinely have your back. And to be able to work in an environment like that is really, really, really lucky. And I just don't think that's always the case. So I find it, yeah, very easy to connect to dentists. I feel I haven't been very engaged with social media until more recently. And again, maybe that was just me being short-sighted or feeling like I don't need it, because I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, or I value my time so much I don't want to spend endless hours like on this virtual. I'm very much a in real life person. Okay, that let me start with that, because as much as I love social media, which has allowed us to connect, Flow, so I'm super grateful, and it's got its place, and it's got a great platform to share knowledge. But you got to be careful, because there's so much knowledge there that as a consumer, you've got to be able to discriminate what's good and what's fake and what's not good. But yeah, it's definitely got its merits, and I think it's great to be able to connect with people you wouldn't otherwise maybe cross paths with in real life. So I feel that's brilliant. But I really can't emphasize, for me, going out for a coffee with somebody is so much more nourishing, if the logistics allow. And so I will try and make an effort to maintain those relations face to face as much as I can. But everybody is leading busy lives, and that's not always easily achievable. So therefore, we have our online mediums to do that as well. But I'd much rather get onto a Zoom call rather than endless, messaging back and forth. It's just I'm just maybe a little bit kind of old-fashioned in that sense, whereas I really love that, face-to-face interaction, or the real life type, get on the phone to somebody, that type of thing. But yeah, I think it's going back to support systems. I think you have to consciously nurture them, Flo. I think over your career, you will undoubtedly meet so many helpful colleagues, or colleagues you've worked with, mentors. And it's very easy to kind of, go through your professional journey, and then, just interact with those people that you are directly working with. But I'm so grateful, Flo, for the people who've helped me on my journey, to the point I'm still in touch with some of my school teachers, some of my tutors at uni. I will still go for coffee with them. Like, it's and I love that. That's just who I am. I really love meaningful connections. So I will try and do as much, like, try and maintain those as much as I can. Um, my podcast actually is non-dental, I would say. It's more about kind of capturing the stories and journeys of people who's inspired from my heritage and by my ancestors, and how they sort of grew up in different places. And one thing I realize is, often a lot of the dentists I've interacted with or worked with, they've got amazing stories and journeys. And I just felt like over years, actually, I was just collecting these stories, thinking, okay, maybe one day I'll like write a book or something. And then with technology, you have to embrace it, Flo. There's no, like, I was so anti AI. I was so like anti-social media. And then you realize actually if you're using all these tools we have intentionally, you can achieve a lot. Like it's very easy to fixate on the um potentially the negative points.
Mhm.
But yeah, so just capturing these stories and using the podcast as a platform to do that has been my inspiration. And I just realized very recently, last couple of weeks, that the conversations that I've been having, um, often at the end of it, the people I'm speaking to, they'll be like, no one's asked us these questions. Like, we've not,
Mm.
like, no one, this is, I've never shared these stories. And I'm like, what you're sharing is so inspiring, is so
Mm.
worthy of being captured. And I'm like, you're just, in my mind, I'm just like, you're one person. Imagine how many people are walking around us who have these
Mm.
incredible stories to share, and how future generations could benefit from them or derive
Mm.
inspiration from them. Um, so that's my little mission at the moment. I am trying to capture as many of these as I can. And to be honest with you, what I've realized is that it's so nice for those people to have the opportunity to reflect, to be nostalgic, to
Mhm.
feel seen. And often that's what we're doing on a day-to-day basis with our patients when we're trying to get to know them, right? We're trying to build that
Mhm.
relationship with them by understanding them, listening to their stories and listening to their journeys. Um, and what I realize is even more powerful is the fact that I get to give this gift back to their family who've got
Mm.
this tangible thing um, to kind of keep and pass through their generations. Because somebody asked me earlier this year actually, they were like, oh, so if you could be born in another decade, or if you could go back to another decade, which one would it be? And I said that if I could go back to like the 1920s or the 30s, I'm not exactly sure when, but if I could be a fly on the wall for when my great grandfather was leaving his homeland to go to Africa to in the search of I don't know, to set up a new life or search for a better life, like what was going through his mind? What was he thinking? What was he feeling? What made him make that decision? And what was his hopes and dreams? And I would imagine, like, I've got dusty, hard black and white photos, but they don't talk to you. We've got technology right now where we can
Mm.
capture the voices and the videos of these people telling their stories in real life. So I want to be able to do that for as many families as I can. So like the podcast, I'm definitely going to obviously continue growing and sharing those stories, but some people don't want to share their stories on a public medium, and that's completely fine. But wouldn't it be amazing to be able to capture it and preserve it somewhat? And it don't have to wait until someone's really sick and really kind of unwell
Mm.
for us to do that. So I really regret. I had these amazing conversations with my grandfather where he was telling me about his childhood and his early life. He had, he remembered everything. And it was
Mm.
just so nice for me to just sit there, and we just sat there and for hours and just listened to him. And I didn't think at the time like I should be capturing this. I was just kind of soaking it all in, and I was just nourished and amazed and inspired and loved it. But
Mm.
yeah, that's a regret that I have, but I don't want, I hope that I can um, help others not have to live with that. Yeah.
Oh, that is honestly really beautiful, and yeah, an incredible idea for a podcast. I think everyone yeah has those family stories, and it is so important that they have a home somewhere and that you can then go back, I think, and listen to them. I think everyone really wants to just people to observe their lives in some way, and so I think that's really lovely there. Thank you so much for the chat today. Before you go, we just have the quick fire quiz so that you can earn your dental pearl. There's not actually a pearl, I do apologise, but
That's fine by me.
what is your favourite procedure to do?
Endo.
Nice. On any specific type of endo or?
Um, no, I love endo. I'm just trying to do more of it. I actually just want to do more of it at the moment. So yeah,
Fantastic. What's your favourite scrub colour to wear?
blue.
Nice.
But if I could, I would love to wear a different color every day of the week.
I love that. I love that. Nice rainbow set.
Yeah, as in I just love color. I'm just like I just love color generally. So yeah, it would be nice to mix it up a little bit.
With no context, which is your favourite tooth?
Lower right 6.
Nice. That is a horrible one to do an endo on, though. And if you had to start again, what would you like to do?
And let's start again. What would I like to do? I wish I believed in myself a lot earlier, or a lot more. I think a lot of people around me believed in me, but I physically didn't believe in myself for a long time. So, and am I answering your question, by the way?
Yeah, that was however you would like to. It's
And yeah, I just wish I'd started my personal development journey a lot earlier.
amazing. Well, thank you so much for today. Honestly, it has been incredibly inspiring, and I am so happy that we managed to sort of connect about the veganism, but hearing about your whole sabbatical journey and sort of how that has sort of really led you to evaluate things, I think was so useful to other people listening, because I think the whole idea with this season for us was looking at other people's journeys, because so many people are on that brink of burnout, but actually knowing that you can take time out and come back, I think is going to be really important for people to hear. So thank you so much for coming on today. It's been fantastic.